and there's a term you use, Tradcon. Explain what that is.
Tradcon stands for traditional conservative, and I wish I could say it was my term. I didn't coin it. I forget who did, but it's something that's pretty common in the manosphere right now. Tradcon means traditional conservative, and
Right.
it's meant to be sort of an abstraction or an abstract term for guys who, well, and women, who stick to this traditional idea of conservatism, and they would like very much to present themselves as sort of this new alternative, which really they're kind of this old alternative.
Right.
And what it is they, by and large, traditional conservatives don't, Tradcons don't really, they're still playing for team feminism. It's just that they don't realize that they're doing it. It's more of like feminism that's dressed up in a Norman Rockwell picture. Okay.
Here's what I describe it as: we're the bouncers, we're the enforcement mechanism. You know, you've met me in person. A lot of people think that I'm intimidating, which I probably am. But guys like me, and up until recently, I fell under that banner of Tradcon. In fact, we've talked about some people. Matt Walsh falls under that. Tucker Carlson, you fell under that, although he seems to be.
I think he might have changed his mind recently, and I think you and I have talked about this before, because there was a time when he was interviewing Dr. Helen Smith, and he was very Tradcon and very much like, men need to man up and they need to accept their responsibility, and if there was just had more real men, then this wouldn't be happening. And it's like, no, you don't understand that there is I think one of the things that characterizes particularly men in the Tradcon community is that they expect this old school masculine man up responsibility, but when it comes to masculine authority, they knuckle under to feminism.
Right.
And they don't want men to have any authority, and they want women to be the ones who are still calling the shots, but they still want these guys to basically create a life for themselves that revolves around satisfying women's hypergamy.
So you have all this, you have all the responsibility, but you've got none of the
authority
that goes along with it. Yeah. So, but I fell under that banner for a long time. And, you know, when guys would step out, I'm the guy that would shame them. Right. And then the more I started thinking about that, I'll share a real quick story with you. A buddy of mine, when I was in Orlando, Florida, was a very prominent chiropractor. And I don't know, he'd been married 16, maybe 18 years, because he had a 16-year-old daughter. And to make a long story short, all of a sudden, he's got this gorgeous fitness model hanging around with him. And I never prompted this conversation. He felt compelled to explain this to me, okay, which is interesting because he had guilt coming to me. And it's not like I'm a priest, I can forgive sins or anything like that, right? And he explained to me, he says, you know, I got married, whatever it was, 18 years ago. And he says, you know, people change. He says, I'm not the same person I was then. You're not the same person you were then. And at the time, I'm thinking to myself, bullshit. Okay, you're just coming up with an excuse, right? So that you can dump number one and move on to number two. All you're doing is you're getting a new car. That's basically what it is. It's like window dressing. But the more I thought about it, and as time has gone on, he's right. I'm not the same person I was at 20. I'm not the same person I was at 30. Hopefully, I'm a much better person. Hopefully, I've evolved. Hopefully, I've grown. And most people have. And if you're the same person that you were 20, 30 years ago, you know what? You're going nowhere. You're stagnating. You're treading water. You're actually losing ground. So people do change. Some people change for the better. Some people change for the worse. But they use guys like me, guys like Tucker, other guys that we can mention here, to sort of shame the ones who step out to getting back in line. And I'm not playing that role anymore, because I understand who you're really working for. It's the feminine imperative that you're talking about. You're not working for the patriarchy. Yeah, you're working for the feminine imperative. You're their bouncer. You're their goon squad. And I'm just not going to play that anymore.
You were the enforcement arm of that. And the other thing is that a lot of guys, particularly in Tradcon circles, are some of the worst white knights that you will ever meet. Simply because they feel that by being that enforcement arm, by being that, you know, hey, I've got my shit together, and I'm going to, you know, I'm a traditional conservative. Even Tucker Carlson did this too. Like when he was, you know, talking to what's her face, Dr. Helen,
right?
You know, he was very, you know, he was doing what we call amogging, which is alpha male other guy. And it's basically a technique that old pickup artists used to use when they were in a social situation where there was another guy who was there who was more alpha, who was like kind of, you know, being a cock block for him when a guy was trying to get in. And so these guys, I see a lot of pastors do this, a lot of particularly evangelical Christian pastors do this. And I see a lot of, who else is recently? Anyways, there's a lot of them. But what I was going to say is that from a male perspective, there's this idea that the more that we identify with the feminine, the more we're going to get in there, the more we're going to be endeared to any particular woman that is on, you know, we want to be on their side. And if we can be on their side, then they're going to come around and they're going to say, oh, well, I heard what you say, you know, like even anonymously, you know, I heard what you said on such and such a show, and I really thought that was great, you know. And so you've got men who are, again, the enforcement arm, but then I also have to sort of draw attention to Tradcon women who really want an easy out. They want to have that forgiveness. They want to say, hey, look, I've gone through my party years and I've facilitated pretty much my sexual strategy all this time. And I don't want to be held responsible or accountable for all that. And so if I could just find one last real dude who, you know, who was a real man, who, you know, accepted his responsibilities as a man, then I could be forgiven of all that. And we can move on and I can have babies, and you can, or maybe I already have kids and you can accept the responsibility for another man's child. But by doing so, you are accepting a traditionally conservative masculine responsibility. And that's where a lot of what we call trad tots come out. They decide that whatever it is that is flattering, the most flattering parts of the red pill end up becoming just the red pill for them. And anything that's unflattering is something that they would rather men not pay any attention to, because it ruins their chances. So you've got guys that are still playing exactly the same game as anybody else's. Right. It's just they're saying, okay, we're going to play as if we're conservatives.